Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you, Nandan. That was a fantastic presentation. I thought we will go through some detail in our conversation before we throw it open to questions from the audience. I think Peter Drucker once said that it's pointless to try and predict the future, but you can do something about the future that's already happened. What his presentation was entirely about is not a crystal ball grazing about what will happen 10 years from now, but most of it has already happened or is already happening, which is why it's so important. So to go through your themes, I saw you use three basic themes. One is don't stress too much exports, because what will happen will anyway happen, but if you try and think that you're going to become some manufacturing base like China, forget about it. Second theme, of course, is that your manufacturing is done. I think Bruce Greenwald of Columbia said that manufacturing is done everywhere. I think everywhere robotics and automation is going to take over. So it's not going to be human-led. In fact, the falling population in Europe, I think they can replace with robots instead of things like that. Okay. So the first thing, are we saying that export is no longer, you came from an industry that actually created the case for export optimism.
Yeah.
But are you now saying that it's now not something that's...
No, I think it's not that exports is going to go away. I mean, we went from 15% trade to GDP ratio to 50%. It's like 50% is not going to go to 70%. See, when you look at how do you strategically, when you think of growth, what are the demand drivers that are going to drive? All I'm saying is that exports is not a driver of growth. Exports will continue, but whether it will go from 50% upwards, I'm not so sure. So it's not that I'm saying there's no exports. I'm just saying that it's not a driver of growth.
Right. The other thing is about manufacturing, which was the point you made, that manufacturing is done. There's nothing much to be done.
Because there's a double whammy. Right? There's
whammy.
automation in the West. So if Adidas makes shoes with 100,000 or 50,000 employees in Germany, that's 1 million jobs in Asia gone. If somebody else starts making garments, that's gone. And then Chinese overcapacity. I mean, steel, copper, nickel, aluminium, coal.
So we missed that bus as well.
Yeah.
So basically our slogan should change from make in India to serve from India or serve in India?
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not saying don't make in India.
No, of course we have to do whatever we have to do. We have to do.
Obviously, you want to see what is it that you should do. You should promote urbanization. Because urbanization is about productivity, and when you urbanize, you're not saying is manufacturing or services. You're saying urbanize. So urbanization will drive productivity. You need to promote education, literacy, and all that, because that will again drive productivity. English, all that will drive productivity. And I think you have to make business easier. Because you don't take a view on what is that business, because that market will figure out. So those things have to be done. But if you want to say, let's get some chappie to come and set up a factory here, that ain't going to happen.
Right. The other thing is, the third point you made was about you're not going to have large employer-led jobs growth, but you're going to be small businesses and aggregated. So does this mean that we're going to become a nation of effectively self-employed, self-driven?
You already are.
You already are.
90,
No, that's at the very poor level. But you're saying, are you the middle class fragment into
I think the
self-employed?
difference is we are already an informal economy. Like only 7% of employment in the formal economy, 93% informal. But it's what Professor Vaidyanathan called earning, India earning, right? These guys don't have a social security platform, they don't have productivity, they don't have education, they don't have access to markets. That will come from platforms. So it is a different form of, so the informal, which is essentially at these low productivity levels, will go to higher productivity by platformization. So that's what I meant. So it'll go from informal to formal, but in a very different way than thinking that there'll be a large factory making 100,000 cars in Manesar or something.
Right. Actually, if you see, that means the entire thinking of whether you're a parent or a government cannot be like it was. Once upon a time, you used to say, I need to get into a government job. Then you said, I need to get into a bank. And then after the 90s, they say, I need to get into Infosys or TCS or some such thing. Today, you're saying all those things are gone. And you got to think about how do I project myself into a different kind of job. Meaning whether, basically I have got to become a brand builder of myself who has the skills.
You're a portable personal brand.
Does that also mean that you're going to have a class system where there is a small group of people who can highly skill themselves, who will be very well paid, and a vast majority with low skills who will have very basic subsistence jobs?
Yeah. But I think it's like more of a Western phenomenon.
Right.
I think in the West, And you're seeing all that, right? You're going to have these super rich guys in Silicon Valley, billionaires and all that, running these companies, and you have maybe a lot of people working in McDonald's, but there's the middle class. I think India, but I think that's because it's a different situation, it's high per capita. I think India, just the raising of domestic consumption, Adam Smith at World, urbanization, raising per capita income from $2,000 to $10,000, will generate so much of internal activity led by productivity growth. This is not without productivity. And my theme is that digitization is going to create productivity in services,
right,
which is at the scale that it was in the manufacturing in the 19th century.
Right. When you're talking about the digital future, I mean, I think given the infrastructure that's being laid out, the Aadhaar backbone, then the payment system, the IMPS, then the GST and network, will we actually transition to become the first cash-free economy in the world?
Yeah, we have actually the world's most sophisticated digital infrastructure because, for different reasons, in the United States, the bulk of public investment in digital infrastructure stopped by year 2000, right? The internet was invented in 1980. GPS was built at the time of Reagan and Star Wars and all that. So by 2000, the public investment in digital infrastructure went, and then it went to the market. So today, digital infrastructure in the US is essentially provided by Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, all that. And a lot of the infrastructure is controlled by them. So your access is controlled by them. Whereas in India, these are available as public infrastructure. Identity, authentication, payments are all available as public infrastructure. In China, they gave it completely to internet guys. So today, payments in China is controlled by Alipay and WeChat. So we have a unique situation where public infrastructure, well done at the right level, will now drive private innovation.
Right. Actually, I didn't realize this before, that outside the Googles and the Facebooks, we have created the first huge platform in the Aadhaar and the entire payment system.
It's only billion user platform.
Yeah, and the mobile system and all that. I think we have a billion mobiles and a million this thing. I think that's huge scale. I mean, whatever we do. But something worries me here. Actually, we have a jet engine in the digital opportunity space, but we have a bullock cart in Delhi and all the state capitals. How do we reconcile this? I mean, you have a super highway in the digital space, and you got a crater road in Bangalore. Huh?
Crater road will continue.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you reconcile that? Because I don't see policy moving in tandem with the possibility.
Yeah.
I think just a day or two back, I think Mohandas Pai wrote about how with the GST thing doesn't even talk about much about e-commerce and how you're going to do that. So that's
a broader issue. I think all over the world, governments and regulators are not able to deal with fast-paced disruption. Right? I mean, you're seeing this whole issue with Ola and Uber and taxis and all that. So because even guys in business don't know what is happening. So how do you expect some guy in government to know what is happening? It's not going to happen. So I think how to design next generation regulation, which is using data symmetry. For example, a lot of regulation earlier was because of knowledge asymmetry between producers and consumers. But data will actually help in reducing that. Today, when you travel on Uber or Ola, you rate the taxi driver, he rates you. So these kind of things will change regularly. So I think, but this is a global problem. You will not be able to keep pace. It's happening too fast.
Another thing, you talked about us changing from data poor to data rich, right? What are the implications for the kind of decision making you need to do in government? Because today, if you see even macroeconomic data, you decide, Reserve Bank has to decide its policy based on an IIP that is 2 months old. Even that might be about data a month earlier also. And this is a consumer price. You are deciding about what's happening now. If all this data, if your GST network is going to tell you the pace of economic activity every week, that so many invoices are being every day. So, shouldn't government and economic policy be based on big data?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes. So, how do you prepare the government for that? Maybe you have to go back there.
I think guys don't get it. But I think it's doable. I think today, for example, you have real-time data on an internet website of the attendance of all bureaucrats. Right? People don't know
Right.
this happened.
Right.
Attendance.gov.in.
Right.
Now, suddenly from not knowing, exactly that, 10 guys in the Ministry of Urban Development came to work at 9 o'clock, real time. So I think once GSTN comes, the right thing would be to figure out all the exhaust from the digital footprint and talk about, taxes paid by day, by region, by product. I can do that on a website. So I think publishing all this data will, then people will begin to realize the power of the real time. So I think it's an education process.
Right, and the thing is, a lot of businesses are going to be disrupted.
Yeah.
Do you have a simple laundry list of which, of course, in my own business of media, I know there's been huge disruption.
Gone.
We are all gone.
So look at what, in the United States, the revenue of Facebook from advertising is $20 billion.
That's right, and
The
Google.
revenue of all the newspapers put together, all the print publications is 18 billion.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Correct. Can you give us a list of what other businesses that you think will get disrupted?
Media is disrupted already, right? Now, next will media, but also entertainment video. I mean, Netflix is now worth more than the cable companies. So that whole video stuff, all that. Then automotive for 3 reasons. Because 3 things in automotive will come together.
That's right.
Cars going from fuel cars to electric cars, mobility going from owning a vehicle to sharing a vehicle through Urbanization, and the whole self-driving cars, autonomous cars. So these 3 things will all come together. So you're going to disrupt automotive. All financial sector is disrupted. So banking, insurance, pensions, all that is gone.
So even banks have to reinvent, right? Because I don't think if
Banks
it's
have
going
a
to be
very serious problem.
if you have a peer-to-peer lender in which the RBI has already
Peer-to-peer lending is not the
Okay.
I mean, peer-to-peer lending is a good thing, but that's not to me.
That's not the
If people think of disruption in banking going to come from peer-to-peer and blockchain.
Yeah.
I actually think those are lesser factors. It's going to come because I can now design a bank at 100 the cost of an existing bank. And I can do that with 200 employees. And I can serve the whole country on his phone.
Right.
So distribution is changing. Lending is changing, the automation, data, and all that. So why do I need all the, I don't need branches, I don't need ATMs, I don't need employees. I mean, the whole game has changed.
You don't need credit cards either, no? Or debit cards.
No, because what will happen when
mobile phone is there?
No, what happens when UPI? See, what is a credit card? A credit card combines a payment product with a loan, right? When I take a credit, when I swipe it, I get a payment and I also can have credit. These 2 things will get unbundled. So when UPI comes, UPI will handle the payments, and that will be at a friction-free cost. Transaction cost will be very low, and somebody else can give a line of credit and attach it. So the unbundling of payment and lending will essentially deconstruct credit cards.
So all the banks are white elephants now. I mean, we thought only public sector was.
See, public sector banks have challenges.
Yes.
Public sector banks,
He likes to be diplomatic.
Rupa will tweet something. So, public sector banks are between a rock and a hard place. NPAs, aging workforce, missing middle. They didn't have from 84 to 2004, so no officers in the middle. It's challenge, and I think you are going to see, essentially, you're going to see privatization by stealth. So the same thing that happened to the telecom industry, where BSNL, MTNL went from multi-billion-dollar valuations in 2000 to whatever it is today.
1 rupee.
Or
1 rupee.
or what happened to airlines will unfortunately happen to the public sector banks. The public sector banks have been losing market share at the rate of 1% a year. So currently the market share of public sector banks is still about 70%. But I believe that it will now accelerate to market share loss of 2 to 3% a year. So you can expect in a decade that public sector banks will be the minority of the thing. So that now what does that mean, right? So India has to grow. So GDP growth 7%, nominal growth 6, interest rate or 13-14%. Deepening of credit, right? Because more people can get loans. So that takes you 20%. And loss of market share of PSU banks. So the non-PSU bank lending market has the potential to grow at 30% a year compounded. Now who's going to take that? It could be the private sector banks that get their act together. It could be the new bank licensees. It could be the NBFCs, or it could be non-bank players. Because if data is the basis for lending, you see what's happening in China. If you look at China, state-owned banks are the same problem of Indian banks. All payments have migrated to WeChat and Alipay. And WeChat has launched a bank called WeBank. And WeBank was launched just 2 years back, and it already has a book of $80 billion of loans. And they use capital from the state-owned banks. But they have the data, so the data allows them to do individual pricing of risk on data.
Micro-targeting.
And they keep the creamy layer of the profits. So they get the capital from the state-owned bank and lend, and they keep 75% of the profit and give 25% to the state-owned banks. So the guy making the biggest money may not even be a bank; it will be some data guy who figures out how to use capital from other players. Right?
There's a huge regulatory challenge in all these changes, right? So you think the government ever has the capability to do that?
What should I say in a Swarajya group?
No, they have to build the capacity. No, I think
national regulators are doing well. I mean, I think RBI gets it, SEBI gets it, TRAI gets it. These three I know get it. So I think national regulators, but the problem is going to be state-owned regulators, like automobiles, this whole taxi business. State-owned regulators will simply not be able to move at this speed. So I think that's again goes back to my services argument. If there are 5 regulators, SEBI, TRAI, PFRDA, IRDA, and RBI. If you can make those guys operate the best regulations, you've got to expand the services market, because that's where the action is.
I think we're lucky that certain things were centralized in the right place.
Locked out, yeah.
Yeah, whereas in China and America, I think China, I think it doesn't have a problem.
No, China has labor issues. Right?
Labor issues, correct.
A guy coming from to Pudong from some Western thing, he can't get education there, he can't get healthcare there.
So all the things we achieved were through mistakes, is it? That is, we didn't realize that. Infosys came up, I think, because these fellows wanted foreign exchange, so they let you grow without trouble.
We sort of stumbled onto this.
Okay, on the India-China comparison, I think how do you think this will affect China if it's going to disrupt so many things here? They are the factory to the world. Now, if do they face bigger challenges or do we face bigger challenges?
So they have a different set of challenges. Right? I mean, they have this massive overinvestment. They're going to there are political issues, middle class, censorship. I mean, transition to democracy. I think it's very different. So they have different set of. I don't think you can compare the set of challenges.
Other thing, in coming to services, now we see that one of the biggest changes that's happening in all the software services companies is that even they have started automating. Now, how far can services grow when most of those things are going to get automated? I mean, they will obviously not create the kind of job that they were doing, say, 10 years
You're already
ago.
seeing the decline, growth rate.
Right.
I mean, today the growth rate of the Indian software industry as defined by NASSCOM is around 10%. Right? That's a long way from the 30-40% growth we used to have 10 years back. And then, because the growth rate is 10%, and if they're going to improve productivity through software automation, they're effectively not going to be hiring people. So the notion that you're going to hire lots of people in the software and BPO industry, I think that is going to.
So what do we do with all those surplus engineers?
They have to become entrepreneurs.
They'll have to. Other thing, where do you think our competition in services will come? We have done a lot of things. Of course, I'm not only talking about software, but all kinds of things. Is there do you think China must be frenetically changing there also, right?
Which services? You're clear about which services?
No, all the digital platform-based services and various things.
See, essentially BPO services are going to be replaced with bots. Right? Already you're seeing that. I mean, if you go today to a bank, you're not talking to a person, you're talking to a chat bot. So bots will replace BPO services. And AI-based software will replace software. And also people will move from having in-house software to moving it on the cloud. Right? So internal IT systems will now go to clouds. Right? So I'll go to Amazon or Facebook, or Microsoft or Google and buy clouds. And clouds are going to keep dropping in prices because they're going to scale benefits. So stuff like the lower layer of the stack, which is BPO and IT outsourcing, will be affected first. And then as apps move, then it's going to be gradual, but there's challenges.
Where do you think the jobs will grow in India?
That's why I'm saying jobs will grow domestically by, see, you know, what did Adam Smith, what he talked about how, you know, division of labor creates jobs, right? So urbanization will create jobs, right? Because urbanization requires people to be serving each other, right? Education will create jobs. The productivity of knowing English in India gets you income 3-4 times what you get if you don't know English. So if everybody knows English, you'll have a productivity boost. The technology will boost the productivity. So I think that's how job creation will happen.
This is the last two questions before we throw open the questions to them. One is, we talked about the new type of social safety net. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think, how do you think it needs to be designed?
Well, it should be like this. If I'm a Uber driver, I should be able to buy a pension product on my phone with no mis-selling, so that it's properly articulated. I should be able to get a loan on my phone. I should be able to get insurance policy on my phone. When I have a claim, I should be able to redeem the claim on my phone. And I should do that with multiple service providers. So NPS provides the pension, behind that is the other stuff, some insurance guy. And all this should be linked through APIs that come on my phone.
So basically you own everything around you, your jobs, your skilling, your pension, your everything. So the individual has to become a manager of himself
Exactly.
in more ways than one, right? Okay, there's a lot of education.
But you know, there may be people who provide that as a service.
Right.
So there will be market aggregators
Right.
who will aggregate this and offer that to. So there will be a service provider who will say, I'll provide a platform of bundling of social security for all drivers. And he will take extra efforts to create that. So there's a layer, market layer which can create.
The only thing that gives me nightmares in this dream vision
Only
is
one thing, is it?
Yeah. Obviously, but you have a very archaic government and governance system. Without a huge shift in the kind of governance we have, I think the pace of this change might be very slow, and might also have a lot of hiccups.
Government has nothing to do with this.
No, but you have a regulation, you got all kinds of things.
No, where are the risks? Government risks, right? I think some things are out of the door. I mean, right? Aadhaar million people have, mobile
Yes.
phones will have,
Yeah.
bank accounts will have. So all that will happen. So most of it is done in some sense. I think the risk is government being unable to keep pace with the lightweight regulations required in this new world.
Right.
They'll still come with some heavy-handed stuff.
Right.
So that's to me is a huge risk.
Yeah.
And the other is that incumbent players lobbying against this change. So it could be like today, taxi associations stopping these guys, or bank employees stopping these guys. All that is going to happen. Or government feels threatened by the loss of value of its assets. Right? But that's a dangerous game to play, because let's say that the value of public sector bank assets will fall. Right? It's already fallen. The market cap of PSU banks all put together is broadly about HDFC's market
Yes,
cap.
absolutely.
The market cap of Bajaj Finance is the second after SBI. There's no PSU bank who's worth more than Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance not even a bank; it's an NBFC. It's worth 47,000 crores. It's worth more than Punjab National Bank or BOB and all
Next
that.
4 banks after SBI.
So already the market has written the thing. So if government feels my ownership of banks is getting is reducing, then they might will say, oh, we should not do this. However, if they do that, growth will come down, because who's going to lend? These chaps are not going to lend. There's no money to lend. Capital adequacy, NPA, this, that, Basel III, whatever. So government will have to let private sector lending grow if they want the economy to grow. So the inevitability of lending going from 30% private to 70% private in the next 15 years is a given. So there's some places where government, even if they want to, they can't do it, because they have to serve the larger goal of making economy grow.
Right.
So these are some of the risks.
Yeah. So Nandan, I've painted the
Well, that's the point of view. I'm not
Right.
going to buy all this argument.
No. But anyway, I've asked some key questions. Now I throw the questions open to the audience. Please identify yourself and Maybe you can ask Nandan the question you want to ask. Yes, yes, you want?
You know, my.
Manish, I run a company in the we are in the renewable energy space. So I had a question for you. You spoke of India's unique position across the world, in having this public digital infrastructure. So will it be able to adapt with respect to the security issues that such kind of a mass digitalization process will pose?
Yeah, at least the parts that we have been involved with developing are developed with the best security standards. I can't vouch for everything, but certainly the India stack is all state-of-the-art security.
But is there a structure in place so that, because the threats will keep changing, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're right in saying that it's not clear whether the state will have the capacity to deal with evolving security challenges is a risk.
My question is, like, if the manufacturing, if you are saying the services are the one which India should concentrate as such, the argument is like, if you are leaving the manufacturing, the core knowledge which you make out of the products is going to reside in some other countries, and the Indian company or Indian labor would be doing most of the derivative works or body services.
No, it's not derivative. It is a very sophisticated service. How do you say it's derivative?
So I was just confused, like, what kind of services actually you meant that India should be?
See, you are basically reducing transaction costs in interacting on services, right? I mean, to give an example, today to buy a mutual fund, it costs 500 to 1,000 rupees to onboard a customer. You have to go and verify him. It's called in-person verification. You have to go and get him to sign on a piece of paper. That's called wet signature. All these thingies take time. But tomorrow, if I can onboard a customer paperless and presenceless, cashless, using all this, the cost of client acquisition goes from 1,000 rupees to 10 rupees. That is a 100x improvement in productivity. What then happens is that for a mutual fund company, the value of a mutual fund investment that justifies getting a customer, today it's worth having a customer only if he's investing 2 lakhs in the mutual fund. So only about 10 million families can do that. Tomorrow when the cost goes to 10 rupees, 100 million families can invest in mutual funds. So that market expansion that will happen will drive more capital into capital markets. So I think service productivity, 10x, 100x improvement will have dramatic consequences. But what are you going to manufacture? You can't make steel. You can't coal. You can't make nickel. You can't make aluminum. You can't make cars. You can't make shoes. You can't make clothes. What are you going to make? You can't make toothbrush. I'm telling you, the current thinking on they're going to make toothbrush with sensors. Because the toothbrush guys want to know how you use your toothbrush. And this is not a joke. Yeah, it's not a joke. I spoke to the world's largest toothbrush company. And their vision is that their toothbrush will have a sensor. Because they want to know how you use the toothbrush. Because their argument is, you spend $30 billion a year on dental products. That is toothbrush, toothpaste, and you spend $300 billion going to dentists. So they're saying, if I can use a toothbrush to anticipate how he should brush his teeth, I'll save him 300 billion. Don't worry, this will take time. I'm just giving you how people are thinking about the future.
Hi, I'm Lakshmi Shah. I'm a senior manager in Flipkart. My question is, what you said is that services will be the next driver of jobs in India. But as Jackie actually pointed out, services itself have become automated. I mean, you mentioned Uber, for example, will probably have so many drivers. But if you listen to Tesla, he wants to automate that also. So probably in 10, 15 years, you don't need drivers themselves. And it's not just in drivers. I mean, even complex businesses like legal advisory, at the lower end, they're getting automated. And probably in 10 years, Swaraj can be run by Prasanna, where automated bots will generate guidelines and articles.
I know the ideology can be automated, but
would it be that in future it would be what Jerry mentioned, that there will be an elite group of people who have the necessary skill set to run the platforms, and the rest of them might probably not?
Yeah. I mean, that's the Western situation. But I think that 2-3 things. One is, when your per capita income is $1,800, you can't automate. There you can automate because the per capita income is $50,000, and therefore the replacement makes automation viable. It doesn't make it viable. I mean, at $1,800, it requires a hell of a lot more automation to make it viable. Longer time frame. Second is, making a driverless car in Route 101 and Bangalore roads will also take time. More chaos. Good thing, because of the chaos we have, automation is getting postponed. Think about it. So it's going to happen here too, but I think we have a way with our digital infrastructure to postpone that much more than the West. The West is in challenge. They are expecting in 10 years there will be no truck drivers in the US. 1.2 million truck drivers, jobs gone. So, there is going to be problematic pretty soon.
Hello, Nandan, this is Aditya here. I'm from Infosys. Last time I saw you live, you were leaving Infosys, so it was wonderful to see you again. My question is, the future that you just described here has too many disruptions.
Yeah.
And as a society, we are already seeing, the traders are up against e-commerce, the autowalas are up against Uber. What will this future do to our political and social fabric? And what will happen? There will be more political parties aligned. What will this impact otherwise?
No, I think where there are incumbents who have political power, they will use that to try to retard this stuff. Right? So auto rickshaw drivers or taxi drivers in Bombay or Bangalore and so on. So I think, yes, they will attempt to stop this stuff. But many of these disruptions will also be beneficial. For example, tomorrow there will be somebody who will be a farm aggregator. So he'll say, I'll create a virtual farm of 10,000 farmers. Each of them has only 1.5 acres, but together I create a 15,000 acre virtual farm. I'll aggregate the market for them. I'll give them technology. I'll give them machines on loan. That's a positive thing. So that guy doesn't have access to markets. Or if somebody aggregates all retailers, then that retailer now has technology, can compete with Flipkart on this side and Shoppers Stop on the other side. So it depends on, if it's in a space where there's an aggregate, there's somebody is feeling threatened, yeah. But you can also turn it around and actually make this politically palatable by showing how disorganized people with no access to markets, no access to capital, no access to technology can now become, so it's all on how you play the game. In Delhi, you'll have a problem, the AAP has all those auto rickshaw fellows. So.
I have a question on the automobile sector. So if you see the overall global trend, the demand for cars is stagnant in the developed economies. So there is a general trend of shifting the manufacturing to the big nations and all. So do you see a high rate of automation in the automobile sector here in India? And because I feel that the automobile industry is still very labor intensive in India. So do you see a high degree of automation in India? In the automobile sector?
Actually, I'm told some of the newer factories are highly automated. I don't buy that in India they're highly labor.
No major factory has less than 100 robots.
See,
Maruti has 400 to 500.
Indian manufacturers will automate because they don't want labor problem, money salary, violence, so they'll say will automate. So they will also automate. Some of the factories in India are as sophisticated as the ones in the West.
So there are 2 points. One is on flow manufacturing and another is on data phases. Right? Like there are a lot of poor citizens among farmers and everything. All those issues we are aware, right? Now having a satellite platform to drive them what they should do, right? And satellite is to be not manufactured by ISRO but by the private organization. Or Aadhaar on the data phases. I'm talking about data phase. So, or Aadhaar, there is a private authentication system which is competing with Aadhaar, which is trying to do the authentication with neighbors so that the migration things is taken care of. So they're competing with Aadhaar because Aadhaar is domestic, right? So there are possibilities on data phases. On the pro manufacturing,
Data what?
data phases, the phase 1 of data, then second phase. Once you have farmers get educated or get rich, then they can take the financial services, right? Right, you go to them now, most of them will reject because they don't have use of money. They don't know how to use that money, right? So there will be phase that you have to cover phase 1 to get them to phase 2 to get more financial services on the platform, right? And on the pro manufacturing, like satellite and other high. My question is like how your views on that, right? That an Aadhaar 2 is competing with Aadhaar, or the security issues that migration is happening because there is Aadhaar 2 is taking care of that. Right? So I mean that's the other point of view because a startup think in a competitive manner, right? So the other point of view is also there.
I didn't understand what you're saying, but yes, as data streams go up, people will have access to products. So the farmer, if the farmer is selling his produce through a platform and is buying his raw material through a platform, then he has a digital trail of what he sold and what he bought, fertilizer, seeds. And then somebody will monetize that digital trail and say, I'll give you a insurance product, a crop insurance, or I'll give you a loan. So that's how it will happen. And that will be done, the platform will actually do that again. So as the data streams, data footprint enlarges, market players will help those guys to come into the formal economy. The platform only grows if we can get people into the formal economy through the platform.
Micro targeting of weather is not there, right? There is a gap.
Yeah, no, that's some weather net or that sky net will do something.
Hello. Last question.
I have the mic, so.
ECA, no question. How can you not have a question?
I'm Sriram. I'm from Boutique Investment Bank called River Bridge. We are operating in Chennai and Bangalore. You actually took us through some time travel about an hour back, and we almost went to the future and
We're back. We'll leave this IIM campus, we'll be back in.
Yeah, so again, my question is exactly there. I think Mr. Jackie pointed out the first speed breaker to this, which is going to be the government, right? I mean, it's not going to happen as fast as we thought it's going to. But I just wanted to throw some light on what is going to be the resistance from the Indian people. I mean, are they going to be that adaptive to these changes? For example, we have two Indias now. I mean, though you could call Urbanization is there, and it's like we've almost adapted Uber already. There is still some kind of grudge that Ubers don't operate when it's raining. Uber don't operate when it's on a crisis day. Okay, Uber don't. I mean, no. And there are a lot of people who go back to their villages saying that their life in city is miserable compared to what their quality of life was in their village because the city inflation is high enough. So we have two India's already in the sense. Are we kind of fully kind of bought into the urbanization? Is my question.
What is the urbanization?
Or this new way of life, digital and all. For example, literacy is also a challenge, right? For example,
how many people have bought into it? It's going to happen. I mean, I'm not saying whether they bought into it, but some of these trends are irrevocable. I mean, they're going to happen. Yeah, it's not like more. Maybe Ananta had a question and PCA. You give these guys in the front row something.
Hello.
This we discuss offline as well. One is that are we still using digitization to talk only about the input provision but not about the outcomes, education, etc. So there is more access to education, but what is education that he or she is going to get? Second, if you can't make anything, at the same time the Uber drivers need cars to drive. So we need to import all these things. If that is the case, then I think we have to pay for it. So you can't have a domestic demand-driven economy without finding the means to pay for it in terms of exports as well. So I think there are some missing parts, but I'm not saying that this is actually a great. It fills a gap, but we need to add more meat and bones to the narrative. That's all.
PCA.
It has nothing to do with economics. What I want to know is what you spelled out. It's absolutely fascinating and probably 99% correct.
99%.
Yeah, it will happen because
I've got a vote of confidence from.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm giving you this vote of confidence later. But tell me, how will this affect the politics in the country? This is such a disruptive change.
No, I tell you. the good news about politics in India is that it's arguing about the past. So the future is wide open for us to shape. But nobody's bothered about it. Right? Huh?
They try and stop it.
No, the good news is that they're not focusing on the future, right? They're focusing on the past. So this is a wide open space, there's no competition in the future business. So I think it will happen because of stealth, or it will happen because people don't know it's happening. And I think it's going to be good, because I think the formalization of India is going to change its politics. Because people will have a stake in the system, so I think it's a good thing. It's sort of lowering the center of gravity of our situation, where if more people come into the system, more people have a stake, more people take loans, more people, buy houses, it's good. So I think that's what I hope. And a lot of our problems is that people are outside the system, that's why they're banging on the door and saying, let me in. So you can let them in at scale, then it changes the question.
My name is Siddharth. I am founder of an internet-based startup.
Very good.
One of the things that you mentioned was the practical importance of English in today's time. But apart from India, if we see any other major country like China, Korea, they all operate, educate, everything they do in their own languages. So shouldn't India's policy focus, both governments and private sectors as well, should be towards building things towards Indian languages?
Well, good thing we have English now. Don't mess with
So it will always be there. It can serve as a unifying language. But we are missing out on a lot of features just because we are doing everything in English.
No, obviously, we should teach multiple languages, but think of English as a productivity tool. It's going to increase incomes for everyone. I'm purely saying in economic terms. English is a massive productivity tool, because when a carpenter knows English, he will charge 4 times the price of. His carpentry may be the same, but he'll charge 4 times. So the productivity is going up.
My name is Sajid. I work as a product marketing manager for Dell. I think what you've shared in the last 1 hour is definitely great. What I'm failing to understand is 20 years down the line, I want to understand from you what would be it if you are presenting the same story 20 years down the line. No, I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this question. The reason why I'm asking this question is a lot of things are going to change in the next 20 years. China is definitely catching up, especially on the services, on their youth, right? And I think to echo his point and his point, I think our major challenge also is the employment thing, right? The way in which our population is increasing, and the way in which the jobs are getting created, and the way in which you're giving away a lot of chunk to outside India. There is a lot of imports into the country where more than 60% of your spend is actually going out of your country, right? I mean, it's not within the country. So if no manufacturing is encouraged, I do understand the perspective.
No, actually, let me rephrase that. I think I meant that expecting manufacturing to be a job creator, it's possible that somebody may set up a plant to make 1 million, Dell may set up a plant to make 1 million PCs. There will only be 100 guys in the factory, that's all. True. So that's what I meant.
But eventually, how is it going to help the common man of the country to improve his way of life?
This is the most massive formalization of India ever planned here. If 400 million Indians come from outside the system into the system, what more do you want?
How will it help in creating jobs?
Because because all these aggregators will create jobs. If every merchant goes online and sells through Amazon or Flipkart, and his business goes up, he's going to create jobs. So the job creation is not in one large mega monolithic company, it's going to be in millions of small companies.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of it. We would have really loved to probably go on and on, because it's been a fascinating conversation. Thanks Nandan for that great presentation, and then thanks Jaggi for engaging in such a intelligent conversation. Thanks all of you for the questions. Now I would request the IIM Public Policy Club member to present a small memento to Nandan. And I'll also sneak in and present some copies of Swarajya.
I read it online, yeah.
just a last bit of announcement. The India Economics Seminar, the day 2 proceedings are going to happen tomorrow as well. We have some very fantastic sessions, so it's a Sunday. Please do try making it. Thanks a lot.